Hi, welcome to Inside the Lines. I'm Lizi Arbogast alongside Ryne Gallacher, and we are here for our Week 4 preview. Hard to believe, but we are almost halfway through the football season.
I know it's sad, but we still have college and pro going on right now.
That's true.
But I mean, high school is like there's just something different about it. It's the Friday night lights. It's getting the family together and seeing all the classmates and stuff. It's just fun.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're getting into homecomings and stuff like that.
Right.
It always kind of adds a little bit of extra glitz and glam, if you will. We will kick it off today with our game of the week, which is Central Kusa at Horseshoe Bend. The battle of the winless. Both these teams were in the same position when they met last year, and Horseshoe Bend kind of wiped the floor with Kusa last year. So I'm a little... You never know what to expect in a game when it's two winless teams going against each other. Both have struggled. Horseshoe Bend has had some really good points defensively. Central Kusa has had some really good points offensively, especially last week. So this one's kind of up in the air. It's really for anyone.
Right. Kusa finally got points last week, which is nice, and
a lot of them too.
And Horseshoe wasn't able to get any. They haven't scored since week 1, and they just had the one touchdown. So for them, I think they got to stick to their same game plan. Normally, I've been kind of beating the drum that maybe they need to change it up and throw the ball, but I think with Kusa and them not having very many guys on their football team, you can wear them down with the run game and kind of take their will, take their confidence, and also like try to get not that you want anybody injured, but like you get them to cramp up and stuff, and you just get an advantage from that standpoint.
Yeah, and that's sort of what Fayetteville did last week. I mean, it was pretty close. It was, I think, 36-24 at halftime. Still pretty close midway through the third quarter. And then Fayetteville, Coach Brett Thomas said this morning that Fayetteville realized that Kusa can't block paper. So that was a pretty bad analogy, but or a funny analogy, depending on how you look at it. But Fayetteville just started kind of running because their strength has been throwing the ball as well, and they just started running the ball, and that's how they scored. Ended up scoring 75 points, which is really, really is impressive for any team, especially a team that's Fayetteville. So I think that you're right, that Horseshoe Bend is going to have to use their run game to their advantage this week against Kusa.
Also, they gotta get the fumbles down because the one game I covered with you, they had 9 fumbles. They only lost 1, I think, that game, and then the next game they had 5 fumbles and only lost 1 or 2 of them.
Yeah.
But last week they lost 4, and you just got to get that fumble. It's hard with that triple option.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, but that's how they feel like they can win football games because they're not going to beat anybody physically, like as far as an athletic standpoint, but they feel like they can maybe try to push you around and play physical football, and that's been a theme for them all year.
And that's what Coach Johnson said about him. Reeltown's coach said they have become a lot more of a physical football team, and I think that's something that's going to wear down Central Kusa. Central Kusa, on the other hand, does have obviously the ability to score. I mean, they scored 36 points last week. That's 6 times as much as Horseshoe Bend has scored all year.
Right, but then it comes back to, do you have guys that want to tackle because they give up 10 touchdowns? So I mean, they gave up the most points all year, which is kind of weird. They played some really good teams, and they gave up the most points last week against the worst football team they're gonna play this year probably. So besides Horseshoe Bend.
Yeah, I think I think that Horseshoe Bend obviously has to watch out for Central Kusa's Dante Daniel. He had like 300 yards last week. He's our player of the week this week. And he has the ability, those big plays that we've talked about all season long with Horseshoe Bend, Dante Daniel has the ability to, if he gets free, no one on Horseshoe Bend can catch him. So he's going to be the number one guy that they're going to have to look out for.
I don't think it's going to be as high scoring either, just because of the way Horseshoe Bend plays. With that clock management, they go on those long drives. Like they go on those 10, 12 play drives, and they haven't been able to get points out of them because then it's usually like drive killers. Like they've been hurt by the referees a couple times, penalties, the fumbles that we go back to that ends up killing the drive after they've gone all the way down the field. And now you're like at like the 30, and that's just a hair too far for high school kickers for the most part. So like they want to go for it or something, and it just doesn't end up working out. But
speaking of a team that has some struggle finishing drives, that seems to have been Dadeville's Achilles heel this year. I think they were in the red zone 4 times last week and didn't have any points to show for it, according to Coach White against Bullitt County. Bullitt County's a tough team, but you got to get points when you have opportunities. And they're hosting St. James, and that's a team they definitely, whenever they get the chance to score, they've got to, because St. James is a tough squad, and they have a really good defense.
Well, I covered the Dadeville game last week, and they kind of got bit by the injury bug.
Yeah.
They didn't have Nelson, and then Holly was down. He was dressed, but he only played because they like to run that wildcat. Mm-hmm. They only did it one time in the game, and he was on the sideline a lot of the time.
Yeah.
So after the game, I asked Coach, and he said he had a little stomach bug. He was throwing up all day prior to the game, so they just tried to get him when he said that. Okay.
He told me he thought maybe he started throwing up because that kid that broke his ankle.
Oh yeah, that's the thing too. The
and you got kid.
Right, and you got to take advantage of those opportunities. The third play of the game, the starting quarterback broke his ankle, and it was one of the worst football injuries that I've seen. And to be there in person, it was really bad.
Yeah.
But you got to take advantage of those opportunities because their backup quarterback came in, and he probably had 150 yards rushing easily, and they ran all down their throat. And once they started to get momentum, the game was already out of hand. But he was able to. Coach White was able to reel Chisholm back in, and that offensive was able to calm down a little bit towards the end of the game.
Yeah, and he did say that Christian Nelson will be back this week. I think he said something about him breaking his hand or breaking a thumb or something like that, but it's in a cast now, so he'll be good to go, and that'll make a huge difference.
Well, they need him.
Yeah,
because Holly he's good, but he's still
not fast.
He's a 10th grader, and he's a smaller back, so he can't take the punishment that you're gonna be dishing off. Well, and they're both the same size as running backs, but it's nice to have a balance at both of them.
Right.
And they're both running backs, but they both do things really differently. They really don't run Nelson out of the wildcat like they do Holly.
Mm-hmm.
They feel like Holly is better on the pulls, and he's a little bit harder to see because he is shorter behind those linemen.
And he's just so fast; it's amazing.
Right.
Another big game that we have our eye on is Reeltown at LaFayette, and there's a good chance this could be for the region title eventually down the line. LaFayette played Thorsby last week, who was kind of also in the mix, the talks for potentially being one of the top two in the region, and they wiped the floor with Thorsby. I think it was 53-14, something like that. LaFayette just crushed them. So I think this is by far Reeltown's biggest competition so far this season, the toughest test that they have faced yet. So I'm really excited to see how Reeltown can handle being up against, going from Fayetteville and Horseshoe Bend to now one of the tougher teams in the state. I'm interested to see how they adjust to that.
Right, this is going to be their toughest competition, and my thing that I worry about with Reeltown is I hope they haven't peaked too early, because it's hard to say what you've done wrong when you shut a team out 40-0. So I hope they were popping on offense, defense, and special teams, and I hope that they haven't peaked. But Cameron Faison is incredible. Every week he's busting off 60, 70-yard touchdowns in the run game. This week he had a 70-yard interception return. He's just incredible, and I think that teams are buying too much into Eric Shaw, which is probably the best thing for Reeltown, because
that's how it's been. Yeah, Eric Shaw's always been kind of that decoy that just takes attention off of other players.
Right, but one thing that I think that they need to improve on, and Coach Johnson talked about it, they have to learn how to, the offense when they're playing, it needs to be at least to look more smooth, because they're thriving when everything falls apart.
Yeah.
That's where they thrive. Faison is going one way, then he reverses field and goes the other way. Same thing with Iverson Hooks. They need to just, instead of running 50 yards to get the 20-yard play, why don't we just run the 20 yards instead of tiring yourselves out and gasping, because that can open them up for an injury. And
and one thing that Coach Johnson talked about, because I talked with him today about that exact same thing, and he said, against Horseshoe Bend, because they don't have the speed, he can do that, where he can run backwards for 20 yards and make something out of it. If you do that against LaFayette, you're going to lose 20 yards.
Right.
They can't do that. Sometimes, you have to just accept a no gain, an incomplete pass. Those plays don't make or break the football game. A negative 20-yard loss could make or break a football game. So they need to play disciplined against LaFayette. So that'll definitely be a game that we'll keep our eyes on. And last on the docket, we have Demopolis is headed to Benjamin Russell. So Wildcats homecoming. Probably it's not going to be a great homecoming. Unfortunately, I think that Benjamin Russell's just struggling this year. I'm not sure exactly what the issue is. I think they're doing too much offensively.
The too much is leading to not enough, because every week we're coming back and we're seeing single or just barely double-digit points, and the defense is continuing to show up, and it's that offense has to help them at some point. We talked about last week that nobody respects their run game, but they try to pass too much to begin with, so everybody knows that the pass is coming. And
you and I have said, I just don't fundamentally think passing the ball 60-70% of the time.
Right,
in high school.
In high school football, it doesn't work, and that's what the next level is for.
And I think Benjamin Russell is up against Demopolis. I don't know a whole lot about them other than they're typically ranked top 10 in the state. They are Class 5A. I just think it's going to be tough for Benjamin. They got to figure out what's going on. They've scored 6-7 points in the last 2 weeks. That's not going to work, especially in 6A ball, and especially in the region that they're in. And they're fighting right now to salvage the season. They're they're 1-3 at this point, and 0-2 in the region, and 0-2 in that region. Can lead you to not making the playoffs. So they got to figure out, I think these 2 weeks where they're not going up against a region opponent, they need to figure out what's going on. And whether that means changing the offense completely, putting in new personnel, I don't know what the answer is. That's why I'm not a coach.
There's also always ways to extend the running game through the passing game with screens, motion, little toss plays, and that kind of stuff. Motion, he goes behind the quarterback and you pitch it out. You do a run with the quarterback and you pitch it out. There are ways to get the run game going. You have to make teams respect it and or hit them with, and then once you can get them to respect it early in the game, you can hit them with the play action and hit them over the top.
Right. So hopefully it'll be a little bit better because they just did not look good from what I heard against them at all. So hopefully they'll put on at least a little bit of a better showing. Whether that equates to a win or loss, I don't know, but hopefully be competitive, do what they're trying to do well. That's sort of what you want to do at this point in the season. Right. All right. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us. Hopefully it'll be another good night of good week of football. Hopefully we'll be able to do a Inside the Lens live. Planning to be at Horseshoe Bend. It's our game of the week for the Central Kusa game, and one team's gonna win.
I think it's going to be an exciting football game. Just because both teams aren't that good, that's going to even out the playing field, I think.
Right.
So, and I think you're going to see a lot of running the football, and it's, like I said earlier, it's not going to be very high scoring. The game's probably going to be quick, but I think it'll be pretty entertaining.
Yeah, I hope so. So, all right, well, thank you guys so much for joining us, and we will see you on Friday night.